If you are keen on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and on getting admitted to a world-class university for an undergraduate, a master, or a PhD degree in computer science, hear it from someone who's done it all. Victor is a former medalist at the International Mathematical Olympiad. He did his Bachelor in Computer Science with me here at Trinity College, Cambridge. The next year, he won an award for the top-ranking master's dissertation, and he has now started a PhD in machine learning. Meet Viktor Mirjanić. Welcome, Victor. It's very good to have you back. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing good.
So you were my student here a while ago, and you've now gone on to greater things and are going to do other stuff. Maybe we should start by you introducing yourself and telling your story. How did you get here? Who are you? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Victor. I've graduated this summer from my 4-year undergraduate computer science course. I was studying here at Trinity, and now I'm employed as a research assistant here at Cambridge. My main interests are in machine learning, more specifically in AI for science, and so I'm applying machine learning to physics right now.
To physics?
Yeah.
Okay.
String theory in particular.
Oh wow, that's exciting. So you're discovering new parts of the theory of physics using AI.
Well, that's the hope, yeah.
That's very, very interesting. Okay, and so on the way to there, you first did the computer science tripos 3 years, and then having graduated with the top mark from that, you were allowed into the part 3 course, the 4th year, which is the equivalent of a master. What did you do during your master?
Well, again, it was mostly machine learning. So for masters, we have much more freedom to choose our modules, and yeah, pretty much all of my modules were about machine learning.
About machine learning. And what was your master project about?
It was studying how graph neural networks behave when they are being learned to reproduce some classical algorithms, and how some symmetries that are present in those algorithms then transform into symmetries in graph neural networks.
So, is this leading towards what you're doing now, or is it somewhat just a preparation unrelated?
Well, kind of. I mean, it was definitely an interesting project and a bit non-standard application of machine learning, because normally people don't connect machine learning with classical algorithms, so that was nice. Yeah.
Classical computer science algorithms.
Yeah, like Bellman-Ford and that sort of stuff.
Okay, great. Okay, so you have quite a bit of experience from what you just did in the past 4 years on how you get into a top university, this one, Cambridge. And many people who view this channel are curious about this. What do I do to get into a place like Cambridge? How long before that do I start even thinking about it? And what do I put in my application statements and so on? So what was your path to get in? How early did you start thinking, I want to go to Cambridge?
So, to be honest, I don't really know. At first, I was part of my country's team for the International Mathematical Olympiad, so that's something that I was focusing on the most in
When did that
school.
start?
In high school, and to be fair, even slightly before.
What kind of age?
Um,
12, 15, 17?
well, yeah, I've kind of liked maths since forever, so I was always doing more maths in my life than I really needed. And at some point that just meant that I was competing in mathematical competitions. And so, yeah, during my high school, I was in my country's IMO team, and there I met some people who applied to Cambridge and who even went to Cambridge, and so that's how I got interested in that as well. And
What age was your first competition, if you remember?
It was, I think, well, the first international one was in my 3rd year of high school. But I was competing throughout my high school. And so, yeah, in particularly during my 3rd year, I remember that I took applying to Cambridge seriously, and so during
Is
my
this
third year.
year out of 5, just to calibrate, because not all schools are the same.
Yeah, it was 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4, okay.
So penultimate. And yeah, I remember during my third year that I was doing a lot of work and writing personal statements and taking English language exams and so on.
So, from when you came here and when I first met you, you already spoke pretty good English. How early did you start speaking? You certainly spoke much better English than I spoke at your age.
Yeah, well, I think my English education was that we sort of have English classes starting from age 11 in school or something like that. And yeah, I guess I was just reading lots of stuff in English online and listening to movies in English and so on. So
Right, but it's just basic school education. You didn't do special things like, spending 3 months in England over the summer or anything
not
like that.
really. No.
Okay, because depending on the country, sometimes what you get at school in language courses is not what's useful to actually speak. But you were quite fluent, as I remember when we admitted you. Yeah, okay, so very good. All the people who write on the channel, many are very concerned about their personal statement. I don't think it has as much weight as they believe it has, but were you equally worried about your personal statement?
I definitely was. I went back actually quite recently to look at what I've written in my UCAS application, and yeah, I wrote about how I was interested in computer science since my very early age and how I want to come to Cambridge to sort of expand my knowledge and also make some meaningful contributions. And well, all those things are true, of course, but yeah, looking back at it, it was all very, very cheesy. So I wouldn't write it like that if I was writing it now.
What do you think led you to being invited for interview out of all the things you submitted?
Yeah, to be sure, I have no idea really, but I remember when I came here to do a sort of entrance exam here at Trinity. I still have a very vivid memory of that because that exam started at 7 a.m. and it was for about 2 hours or something like that. And then afterwards I was interviewed by Arthur Norman, who I think was retiring that year. And we had a chat about the solutions that I made. And because I had a background that was more in mathematics, some of my solutions were a bit non-standard, and so I think he was very impressed by that.
Yeah. So there are 2 stages to the admission, and one is you apply and you need to be among the minority who gets invited for an interview, and that is on the basis of what evidence is there that you are brilliant, and the personal statement has very little to do with that. If you say, I like computers, I like computers since I was little, well, everybody you can write that, so it's not a distinguisher. But the fact you say, well, I've done the International Mathematical Olympiad, and I don't know, I got the medal, I don't know if you did get the medal, so that's certainly some part of your personal statement that makes a difference. If there are some objective, verifiable things that says, I'm brilliant, then that's what matters, plus your school grades, all that kind of stuff, the substance, basically, as opposed to, the aspirations. And so, whatever you wrote in your personal statement, the substance is what it gets boiled down to decide whether you were to be interviewed. And of course, you were making the grade, and you did get an interview. Then at interview, we want to see how you reason about things, because we make you do a problem, or make you do a bunch of problems, you choose the problems you want to do, and then we, something that you feel comfortable working on, we stretch you, making it harder and harder, and see how do you move when you don't really know what to do, but can you take a hint when, you could do it, you don't know how to do it yet, but if we help you, where do you go and how do you think? That's what the interview process is about, which of course you passed with. with flying colors. That's how this works. How scary was it?
Well, it was a little bit. Yeah, it was a little bit scary. Yeah.
When you got out of the interview, did you feel I did well, or did you feel I did terribly?
I'm not sure I remember my experiences post-interview that well, but I think I was content. Yeah.
Yeah, well, good. And it took a while, I mean, maybe a couple of months before you heard back from us. Do you remember when you got the acceptance letter?
No, sorry.
Okay, well, it was 4 years ago. So you did finally get in, and you arrived in Cambridge, and you spent 3 years as an undergraduate. Well, 4 years, if the fourth year still counts as undergraduate. Of this time as an undergraduate, what was the most exciting thing for you?
Well, there is one bit that's relatively fresh. So, when I finished all my work for my master's degree, I just relaxed because I was so burnt out. And I remember one day I was having a nap in the afternoon, and I woke up, looked at my phone, and the first thing I saw was a message from one of my friends saying congratulations, and I was a little bit confused as to what's going on. And then the next message below that was an email from the department about how I was one of the people who had the best master's dissertation that year. So that was pretty exciting. Yeah.
That's cool. So who wrote the congratulations message to you?
Rishab.
How did he know before you?
He wasn't sleeping when he got the email.
Okay. Was there something that instead of being a happy memory was, I can't think about that, the worst thing that you can think of your Cambridge experience so far?
Yeah, well, again, there's a bit that's fresh from my master's degree. So for my Christmas vacation, I had 3 different projects to do for 3 different modules. And that meant that I basically didn't have a Christmas vacation that year. And so that's just something that can happen here at Cambridge. Yeah.
Did you manage to recover after that, or were you back into term for more?
Yeah, so I think the last write-up that we submitted was on the first day of Lent term, or the first day before the last day before start of Lent term, so it really took up the whole vacation. But yeah, I managed to sort of recover because the start of term usually isn't that intense.
How do you manage everybody always talks about the work-life balance. Cambridge is quite intense. How everybody has to find their own way of dealing with that. How did you deal with the pressure of Cambridge, especially coming out of someone who always got the top marks?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just trying to balance my work and have a really solid work ethic so I don't end up with too much stuff to do in too little time. And just make sure that I'm putting in some work every day.
Did you also have an equally structured approach to having some recovery time every day, or at least every week? Did you have a sporting activity that you did regularly or whatever?
Not really. I mean, there's a joke that in Cambridge you can have either good grades, good social life, or good sleep, but not all 3 at the same time. So you kind of have to make some trade-offs.
Okay. You've been in Trinity, obviously, and how did you choose Trinity, and was this the right choice for you, looking back?
Well, I didn't really sort of pay much attention to that at the time, but in retrospect I'm really glad that I was at Trinity, because I know that some colleges have only 1 or 2 computer science students per year, And here at Trinity there were, I think, even 12 of us. And that did make lots of difference because that sort of made it easier for me to make new friends when I came here. And so I think that choosing your college doesn't really make that much of a difference for your education because we were all listening to the same classes, but it does make a difference on who you're going to end hanging up with. So, yeah. From that point of view, I'm glad I was at Trinity.
Did you interact mostly with the people doing your same course in your same year, or did you have lots of friends who were maybe not computer scientists, not from your college and so on?
Well, at the beginning most of my friends were from Trinity, but then as time went on I was sort of making more friends from other colleges. You know, those were people I was meeting at classes.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning I wasn't really meeting people at classes because everything was online because we had COVID.
Yes.
But yeah, when things got back to normal, yeah.
Because you did the fourth year, which not everyone can do, because you have to get get admitted into the fourth year. Then there's already people that you were that were in your cohort in the first 3 years who were not during the fourth. Do you guys keep in touch with the people who graduated then after the third year?
Yeah, I try to. Yeah.
Do you know where they are? Are they already working?
So I know that some of them are employed in companies like Jane Street and so on.
Have they invited you to have a look?
We'll see.
You're not curious, don't want to see what their workplace looks like?
I mean, I don't know.
Okay. Now you've been my student in the sense that I've been your director of studies for your undergraduate period, but I also was the supervisor of your final year project, as we both know very well, so I'm quite familiar with all the work that you did then. You did a rather challenging, tackled a challenging problem which involved building your own hardware as well, which had its own challenges, and a number of things didn't go the way that we hoped at the start, but you had very resourceful ways of going around the unexpected problems. In your own feeling, what did you learn from that project?
Yeah, so that project was really interesting because it was a bit of a breath of fresh air of sorts, because lots of courses here in Cambridge are very theoretical, and to be honest, that's perfectly fine. I like theory, but this was something that I was building with my hands, and I was getting down to the dirty parts of computer science and looking at various hardware level APIs and so on. And
so both of us know very well what it is that you did,
Yeah.
but we haven't even told anyone. So what is it that you did?
Yeah, sure. So it was about making a sort of hardware firewall for USB devices. And I got to essentially make my own little device with some Raspberry Pi Picos and lots of wires. And yeah, as I said, it was different than most of the computer science courses I've had so far, and yeah, that was very interesting.
There was a bunch of stuff to learn on your own, and maybe stuff that was not quite as well documented as the theorems that are described in a textbook. And when things didn't work as planned, you still had to write something up before the end of the year. And so, from my viewpoint, guiding you through that process, the most interesting thing was, can I convey that we've made some scientific advance, so we've improved what the world knows about this problem, even when something negative turns out from the experiments. Have we made progress? Yes, because we can save someone else from wasting time on that, and we discover something. The discovery itself is a positive, even if the experiment is a negative. And being able to write that up in proper scientific way is an important skill, and that's what gave you a first, despite all the drawbacks. You demonstrated that you had gained something for humanity in the broad sense towards doing that. So I was very proud of you for that. But then you switched to something different, machine learning, as you told us earlier. So tell us more about your master's project, with which I'm not familiar.
Yeah, sure. So for my master's project, I was sort of looking at how neural networks behave when they are trained to reproduce steps of classical algorithms such as BFS or Bellman-Ford or Dijkstra. And the idea that I was focusing on was how these algorithms have lots of symmetries. And so, for example, if we represent the Bellman-Ford input as a graph, then that graph has some permutation symmetries, and that can naturally get encoded in these neural networks through graph neural networks. But then these algorithms also have some more complicated symmetries where we can scale some edges up or down and so on in a way that doesn't change algorithm output. And what I was interested in was how these additional symmetries get represented in graph neural networks. And so, yeah, I kind of managed to make some nice plots and write a nice dissertation, and it all turned out pretty well in the end.
So the focus is, if I understand, trying to explain what the AI is doing as opposed to just having it do it.
Well, the focus was to see what's going on when neural networks are learning to reproduce these algorithms, and to see if maybe we can identify some of their weak points through this analysis. And I kind of found out some things that could be tweaked around, and then I produced a model that gets a little bit better results.
Right. Is the publication eventually going to come out of that?
Yes, it is. I am publishing this at the second Learning on Graphs conference, which will be very soon, I think.
Great.
I actually have to make a poster for it.
The best master projects should result in some kind of publication, so that's a very good sign. So some of our viewers are concerned with how do I get into a master's program, which is even more selectively getting into an undergraduate. So for you, it was a kind of no-brainer, because having got a first in the undergraduate, you got free admission to the master's program. But you were side by side with other people who came from outside Cambridge and were doing the MPhil ACS. And do you have a feel what it's like to come from another university, be parachuted into here, people who have done the computer science track was here? Can you compare the experiences? Do you think that they have advantage or disadvantage? I don't know.
I'm not really sure. I know that the program that we have, that we who have finished undergrad here at Cambridge have, is a little bit different than what others who came just for the masters are doing. Specifically, it's about how certain modules are weighted versus are a dissertation in the end. So,
but you are in the same classes, you're sitting next to each other.
we're all listening to the same lectures. Well, actually, they're listening to a bit more lectures than us. I'm not sure why that's the way it is, but yeah. But essentially, we're listening to the same lectures.
Yeah, well, when you both take a course, it's the same course for both of you. They just take more modules, but
yeah.
that's another story. How would you compare the undergraduate side with the master's side in terms of your experience as a student, and which one did you enjoy more?
I think I enjoyed my master's the most because there we had lots of flexibility to choose what we wanted to do. Because, for example, here in Cambridge in first year, we were all taking exactly the same exams. And then as time goes on, year after year, we do get more and more flexibility in our choices. But then for our masters, we can just pick and choose from what whatever it is that the modules are offered. And so that was really nice because then I could just pick 5 machine learning modules and do that. And also, the way that masters is taught is different from the way undergraduate courses here in Cambridge are taught, because for our masters we no longer had any exams. Everything was sort of graded as part of that module that we were taking, and that meant that we could have, for example, some reading classes where we would read scientific papers and then discuss them and ask each other questions during class, and that was something that was very interesting and a very different experience from those standard undergraduate years.
So can you explain how you get a grade on the basis of asking questions in class?
Yeah, so in those reading classes, everyone would get a paper to read and then to present for maybe 20 minutes. And then we would sort of ask questions to the presenter and just in general be active, and all that would in the end become part of a grade. And in those specific cases we also had some projects to do that were also research based. That is also something that wasn't really a part of our undergraduate degree. For the undergraduate degree it was more of sort of reproducing things that already exist, whereas for masters we're being pushed to do something new, even if it fails.
As far as projects go, what tends to get evaluated is some write-up of the project as opposed to the project itself. And so, for example, in the third year of the undergraduate course, you have to do a rather big project, which results in a rather big document of the order of 40 pages, which is probably the longest thing you've written in your life at that stage. What kind of preparation do you get for writing such a long thing, having never done it before? How did you cope with having to write 40 coherent pages on something?
Yeah, to be fair, I have no idea how I did it the first time, but then every next time I did it, it was a little bit easier, because for my masters I had lots of smaller projects with smaller write-ups, and then again, in the end, there was a dissertation with a larger write-up. And so every time I did it, it got a little bit easier.
Well, you're going to have to write an even bigger one if you're continuing with a PhD.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So let's talk about this. You have plans of getting into a PhD program. That's a big choice, and obviously having done the MPhil made you understand that you like research enough to commit at least another 3 years towards that. So can you just take me through what made you feel that research is what you want to devote the next 3 years for, and what will this enable you to do? What are the things that you can do in your career that you couldn't do without a PhD, but you really want to do?
Yeah, so I don't know, I guess PhD is something that I've always thought of doing because I really like doing research as I'm doing it right now, and I find the idea of spending 3 more years just doing a deep dive into a very specific topic, I think that's really appealing to me, and that's something that I could see myself doing. And I know that, for example, lots of research jobs in the industry are kind of requiring you to do a PhD first, so PhD would obviously help in these sort of cases.
Can you think of a kind of job that you would like to be in when you are in your 30s, 40s or 50s?
I guess I would love to still be doing some research, but I think that's still too far away, and I'm focusing on getting into a PhD right now.
Right. And of the PhD itself, during the PhD, before you submit your PhD dissertation, what's the bit that looks most exciting? I'm sure you have colleagues that you can see day to day and maybe have lunch with who are doing a PhD, what of what they do appeals to you?
Yeah, I guess as I've said, it's about doing research and getting to be really proficient in something that's extremely specific and something that not really a lot of people in the world are doing and knowledgeable about.
So the business of research is a bit scary because the definition is that we do things that nobody knows how to do yet. Because if we know how to do that, it's not research. And so there's always the chance that I want to do something, but I might not be able to do it. Then what do I do at the end? How do you view that aspect of research?
Yeah, well, there's always that risk that the thing you're doing just doesn't pan out in the end, and it turns out to be a wrong lead, or there's an error somewhere along the way. And yeah, I guess that's just a risk you have to take, and you have to trust yourself that what you're doing will sort of work out in the end, and if it doesn't work out, that you can fix it. And you just keep doing what you're doing.
Sometimes it may not be possible to fix it. What do you do then?
Well, yeah, I guess then you cut your losses and try to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, well, that's true. But don't be scared about the fact that some things might not work, because if something didn't work, then you've discovered that it didn't work, or at least you couldn't make it work. That's okay. But if you only ever did things that work, then you're not being adventurous enough.
Mm.
You need to try things where there's a chance that it might fail. I mean, so long as you're not going to die, so long as you're not going to lose your house if you fail, then it's part of the experience of research to do things where sometimes it doesn't work, because otherwise nobody would try adventurous things that we don't know how to do. Nobody would discover America if you only went to the part of the sea where you're sure what's going to happen. And so, yeah, don't be afraid that sometimes it won't work, and there should be allowance here. Whoever your PhD supervisor ends up being should give you enough leeway to try things, including things that some of which will not work. If you have a good PhD supervisor, they will guide you towards doing things that, okay, nobody knows if it can work. Some of them will work, some of them we don't know, but it's okay if some of them don't work. It means you're trying your best on the frontiers of what we know in your field of science. So it's good if some things don't work. It means you're at the right level. And if everything works, you're not at the right level. You're just doing too easy stuff. So yeah, it's the right attitude to have, not to be too worried about that. And that's a luxury, or kind of extra freedom of something like a PhD program, because for 3 years you can explore without too much worry if it works or it doesn't work. You have to be prepared for the frustrations and the inevitable disappointments, so long as it's not disappointment only, right? Then it's part of the experience. So in a sense, the 3 years of PhD is also a try before you buy. Do I want to commit the rest of my life to doing research? After 3 years, you can say, well, now I go home with a PhD, but it's not really what I wanted. Or you can go home and say, well, I got a PhD, and even though there are times when I'm frustrated, I actually like this struggle, and I like the excitement of actually getting over this with something that, maybe through a completely unseen route, lets me find a solution. That's what I like. Something where I don't know in advance how to do it, but when I find out how to do it, it's really cool. And PhD would be a much more serious testing ground for whether you like that stuff than the master ever was, because the master is still much more a guided rail than the PhD is. There's no, at least in Cambridge, there's no taught courses in the PhD. It's just do something, be brilliant, come up with stuff, and sink or swim.
Yeah, that is a little daunting, to be honest.
Trial by fire. Well, having known you for 4 years, I think that you definitely have the talents for it and you will enjoy it. And I think we had a discussion about your PhD towards the end of your first 3 years. And I urge you to get a bit more of a focus on what you really wanted to do before embarking into research things. And you look to me like you are more focused now. You kind of know a little more what you want to do. Would you agree, or is this just my feeling?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Though it can always be better, but we sort of have to take what we have.
Have you already agreed on a project and a supervisor and so on for your potential PhD?
More or less. I'm ironing some details out, but yeah.
How did you choose a project that suits you? Was it offered on a menu of things that you could pick from, or did you come up with something and said, can I do this?
Well, not really. So it was more of just talking to lots of people and seeing what other people are interested in and what other people are doing at the moment, and then trying to sort of see what I would be interested in doing for 3 years and finding some sort of a compromise with potential supervisors.
Is this something that already has the backing of a potential sponsor, or are you just going to apply for generic funding?
Yeah, I'm going to apply and hope for the best. Yeah.
It's not something that is part of a bigger project that's already funded.
No, not really.
Yeah, but there's, when I was considering my own PhD, I was much more naive, and I didn't know that most people who do a PhD get paid by someone else. So I thought I had to save, tens of thousands of pounds for myself and have that in the bank, and then do the PhD. But actually, most people get their PhD paid for by someone else, and there's at least 2 different routes. One is to join some existing project which wants to do something and carving out a part of that, and money exists for whoever works towards that. And the other one is to come up with some project with the cooperation of the supervisor, but the project itself has not already been funded. But on the basis of this being one of the top proposals that have been put forward that year, then the top ones may get some funding for doing that. And you're going that route, is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, very good. So, you are now in the final weeks, I guess, of putting together your PhD application, and there's many parts that need to be collated. Which ones are the easy ones and which ones are the hard ones you find?
Well, to be fair, I think all parts are the hard parts because ultimately the PhD application depends on all of them. So yeah.
There isn't a distinction between, this thing's already in the bag, and this thing, I have to think hard about.
Well, I guess the part where I write my name is a bit easier than the part where I write my project proposal.
Well, in your shoes, I would have said, the part where I say I got a first in my undergraduate, I got a distinction in my dissertation, that's the stuff that's in the bag now, because, you spent the previous 4 years doing that. Now you can just reap the credits. So that should be a big part. I mean, when your application is evaluated, the fact that you got these results already is going to be a big boost. And that's already done. So consider that something valuable that's already there. So of the bits that you still need to do, I guess you have your some kind of personal statement, some kind of project proposals, some references and all that stuff. Yeah, well, if they're all equally difficult for you to put together, then fine. For someone who's going to be in your shoes in a year or two's time, who's thinking, well, maybe when I finish my master, I also want to apply for a PhD to a prestigious university. Now that you're doing it and you're about to submit, do you have any suggestions for them, any recommendations, what you wish they told you 1 or 2 years ago so that you could have got there ready?
Well, if I end up being successful and get a PhD, then we can do another interview next year.
Okay, well, very non-committal. So about things that actually already worked for you, about the stuff, let's give advice to people who are at an earlier stage, people who are aiming to apply for an undergraduate degree at a prestigious university. What would you tell them, since you've obviously been successful with that?
Yeah, I guess just to work hard and try to focus both on maths and on computer science, and to sort of know what you're aiming for and what you plan to get out of Cambridge.
What did you plan to get out of Cambridge?
Well, as I said, I remember what I wrote in my personal statement when I applied, but yeah, I think I sort of got out lots of knowledge in various areas that I didn't even know existed, and I found out that I really like doing research.
This interest in machine learning that is evident now, did you have that when you applied?
Yeah, I did, although at that point I didn't really know anything about machine learning.
Well, this has really exploded since ChatGPT a year ago. Has this made a difference in your interest towards it, or were you equally interested before ChatGPT became popular?
Yeah, so I was interested before, though I specifically somehow never got into those large language models like ChatGPT. But that is something that I would like to explore as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.